Welcome to the Saturday Night Live Afterparty. With SNL back for its 48th season, we thought it would be a good time to discuss all the changes happening at the show, and also a few changes here at the Afterparty. I'm Katherine Coleman, and look what the cat dragged back in, it's John Murray. If you'd like to connect with us, you can do so on Twitter at SNL Podcast. To get early access to all of our Season 48 coverage, head over to patreon.com/SNL Podcast. It's our patrons who make this show possible, and we are so thankful to everyone who's already come on board. All right, here we go. Hello, hello. Welcome back. How's it going?
It's going very well. How was your summer?
It was busy. My dad had a double lung transplant. I booked, 4 or 5 live shows we got coming up. Just all over the place. How about you?
You're just going to gloss right over the double lung thing. Okay. Well, I guess we don't need to dig too deep on that.
He's good. He's good. So,
Fantastic. That's really all we needed to get to the bottom of. As our audience is probably aware, we didn't put out a whole lot of content this summer. Obviously, there was some family stuff to deal with, some traveling, and with the world just coming back to life and collaborations and shows and stuff happening. You've been a busy little beaver.
I have.
Did you do anything in particular over the summer that you're proud of that people can check out?
Let's see. I filmed a new sketch that it was in my SNL packet. They did not hire me, spoiler alert, but it's a great sketch and I did film it on my own. And that it hasn't come out yet. It will come out on October 18th. It's going to premiere at a live show that I'm working on called Katherine Coleman's Social Commentary. That's October 17th at the Squirrel Theater. And yeah, I'm on 2 sketch teams. I direct a 3rd. I'm working on a web series. Just a lot of stuff in the fall.
Yeah, well, it's good to be busy.
And you've been traveling all over the place too, yeah?
Yeah, no, my life has taken me down a completely different track. I've had no creative endeavors over the summer and no real family drama to speak of, but I did get to do a lot of traveling. I took the family in our RV up to the Great White North. We traveled throughout all the maritime provinces, which, since most of our audience is American, they probably have no idea what that means. We have a version of Massachusetts, slightly above your Massachusetts. Okay. And in Canada, we call that Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, Labrador, PEI, New Brunswick. And we toured around all of those provinces, which are Canadian versions of states. And the highlight of the trip by far was we went to the very tippy top of a place called Newfoundland, which is where the world-renowned Steve Finn hails from. Uh-huh. And I was able to meet this guy for the first time in the flesh and had an absolutely delightful time tearing it up in downtown St. John's with this guy. And a good time was had by all. I kissed a fish and we got a little silly, got a little sloppy, and I feel richer for the experience. So I just want to thank him for playing host, and it was just a wonderful highlight of our travels this summer. And obviously, we'll be talking to Steve again on the cast throughout the season. But it was really nice after 6 years to be able to meet the guy in the flesh and have a good time. And he's every bit as wonderful as you would have expected from his participation in the show.
I love that. I get to play virtual mini golf with Steve like once a month, and that's as far as we've made it in our relationship. So
I have no idea what virtual mini golf is or why anyone would want to do it, but hey, if it's working for you guys, great. We got to keep that camaraderie high.
Right. It's our bonding time.
Good. Very good.
All right. Well, that's enough shooting the breeze. We do have a lot to discuss. So should we get into it?
Very true. We got a lot of ground to cover, so there's no point in wasting any more time with this small talk.
Right.
What do we want to talk about first?
Well, we didn't get the chance to jump in and talk about all the new hires when they were announced, so I figure we can start there.
Yep. Now you have some insights actually. So let's actually do this upright. Right. You had an opportunity over the summer to go to one of the showcases. So why don't you give us the rundown? What was your takeaway from that?
Yeah, it was a really interesting experience. It's one of those things where like they don't say it's an SNL audition, but if you just kind of know what you're looking for, you know which show it is.
Right.
Um, so I grabbed tickets. I went. It was at the Improv Asylum, which was the original UCB in New York. So it's in Chelsea in a
Right.
basement under a supermarket.
Yeah,
Um,
the little one on that side street
yep,
that you would miss if you blinked. Yeah, but
that's
aside
the
from the
one.
pillars that block the
Block the
the
stage,
audience
right?
view of the stage, it's a wonderful dank little room. Like
Yep,
that's you feel special in that room, and they've
you do.
actually had a lot of auditions there over the years, so
Hmm.
that fits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we walked down there. My husband went with me, and immediately, I noticed they've got a lot of seats blocked off that are reserved.
Hmm.
And we sit down, and there's only two seats together left are in the front row. So we sit there, and I sort of look over, and I'm talking to him, to Nathan, and then out of the corner of my eye, I can see the SNL people getting there. I'm like, oh, there's
Yeah.
Kent Sublette, there's Eric Kenward, there's Steve Higgins. Um, and then some time went by, and then I looked back, and Lauren himself had arrived into the
Yeah,
dark little
he always
basement.
yeah, he always shows up when he's good and ready. I'm told that he's more than happy to keep people waiting, so I
Right.
wouldn't expect him to show up with the others.
I just
Very
didn't I
good.
didn't
So
expect him. I figured, especially at this point, I'm like, yeah, he just waits for them to come to the studio. He's not gonna trek out here to Midtown East West and like
yeah.
to Chelsea.
Well, like he's more involved in some of that stuff than some people might
Mhm.
realize. They think that maybe at this point in his career he's kind of checked out from that and he's just delegated. But from a
Mhm.
lot of the SNL audition stories that I've heard over the years, um, the impression I get is that he not only does come out and scout, at least once they get into the final rounds, like when
Right.
when these are people that are probably going to make it to either a main stage audition or whatever. Um, he's often not just at the showcases, but then like mills about when they go to a club or a bar or something afterwards, and just kind of observes to see like which people can hang and which ones might be problematic. Like I think you learn a lot more about a person when they feel like they're off the clock and are just kind
Uh-huh.
of being themselves. And I think that's part of the process for him. So those are the things that you can't really teach or delegate, and it is just
True.
interesting that he is still very hands on that way.
Yeah. I heard he even went to one of the showcases in LA. So he's
Yeah,
definitely
yeah.
he's all
Chicago
in.
and LA. Yeah, yeah. He often does the rounds when it's the people that are, like they've already kind of called the
Right.
herd and they're down to like their last six or whatever.
Yeah, because this is
But
this is a
yeah,
curated showcase, right? Like this isn't
right,
just a Friday night at the asylum. It's
right.
like these are the performers that we put forth. I know a few of them SNL actually flew in to see.
Mhm.
Um so after the show, they all went up the stairs. They went about halfway down the street, and they had this huge like 30-person huddle.
Yeah,
And then they
okay.
they left without speaking to anybody.
Yeah, that's where all the real decisions are made in
Right.
the powwow
Uh
after the fact.
I wasn't able to sneak in. I wasn't able to really rub elbows.
You just
But
walk up all confident and casual, like, okay, I'm here. We can talk now.
mm,
Just
I
see if people
recommend
clue
the
in.
Catherine Coleman. Was she in the
Yes.
showcase? No, but should she have been? Yes. But
Very good. So you
yeah,
didn't get any great clandestine insights on who they hired, but obviously we're recording this after the premiere, so we
right.
now obviously know who they picked. So who from the actual hires were at the showcase?
Yeah, so I saw Marcello Hernandez, Devon Walker, and then Sierra O'Sullivan, who they actually hired as a writer.
Okay.
They were all three at this showcase. Uh, I'd say the showcase was about a little more than half stand-ups and the
Mhm.
rest character performers. I tend to favor more character performers, people that do a lot of sketch and improv. So the people that made the biggest impression on me were those people. So Sierra O'Sullivan was one of those people. Like I mentioned
Okay.
her numerous times after the showcase. I was like, Sierra O'Sullivan and Jamie Lynn Watson were phenomenal. They should both be hired.
Okay.
Jamie Lynn Watson was not, but then they put Sierra in the writers' room, and I actually hung out with her. She was in from out of town after the show. She didn't like, you know, everybody else had like a bunch of friends around him. It was hard to get in, but I was
Mhm.
able to chat with her quite a bit. Super nice, very happy for her. And then Marcello and Devon both did purely stand-up auditions. I know
Mhm.
Marcello has some more like character stuff on like his Instagram and TikTok. Um, but they were both really funny. Marcello, immediately I clocked him as someone, he just seems very laid back. He seems just like ultra likable.
Mhm.
Like there was an energy to his personality that was like, I want to like this guy, you know?
Okay.
And Devin, I will say, was absolutely hysterical. I mean, it was all stand up, so you know, we'll see how that lends itself to sketch. But
Right.
like, I like his material was top notch. He was definitely my favorite stand up of the night. He made
Okay.
a lot of jokes about how he looks just like Pete Davidson, which he
Mhm.
does.
Very good. Okay. So it's nice that you got to see them before they become, the flavor of the week and start
Right.
getting press. Um, but you think that the biggest spark, like the person that you thought was just, leaping off the page like magic
Mhm.
was Sierra O'Sullivan.
Yeah.
Could you see her transitioning to the cast in a future season?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I think she was a great
Well,
performer.
excellent. Okay. Well, good insights. And
Yeah.
obviously, that showcase was fruitful because,
Yeah.
we got some new hires out of it. All right. So I'm gonna stop taking over and playing host here because this is your show.
Yeah,
So
you
I'm
gave it
just
to me.
gonna yeah, I'm gonna come back from the mic. You tell me what we're doing next.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the extent of what I have to say. I have to admit, I didn't do a ton of homework on Michael Longfellow or Molly Kearney prior to the. I sort of was aware, you know, I briefly glanced at their Instagrams when it was announced and everything. Um, but I don't know. Part of me wanted to go in a little blind. I thought it'd be fun. So we didn't get a whole lot of Molly in the premiere, but I think Michael
No.
Longfellow made an impression. He had his update piece, so
Yep.
that was pretty good.
Now, based on what you saw at the showcase and then what we saw in the premiere, where do you think the show's thinking was at with these hires? Like, how do you think they're going to fit into the ensemble? Who, like, this is such a dumb question to ask because this isn't how the show really does it. But who do you think they're going to be replacing? Like, of the many departing cast members, where do you think these guys are going to kind of fit in and sort of pick up the mantle and take on
Mhm.
some of the roles of some of the departing people? Do you have any hunch on where you think these guys are going to gel?
I just love that you asked me that because in one of the early episodes that I ever did on here, you specifically told me to not do that.
I
Um,
know. No, but here's the thing. I don't care. I don't care. I just show up. I didn't even read your show notes before we started recording. I'm just here to fill a seat.
you're just
I am not
cruising.
invested. I am so checked out. So yeah, I don't care about quality control or whatever. I'll derail your show absolutely. Um, but because this is a
Yeah.
big rebuilding year,
Hmm.
not that we assume that that's really how the show looks at it, but we at least have enough to go on because you've seen them perform outside of SNL, and now we at least have the premiere to give us a sense of maybe where some of
Right.
the thinking was at. We don't have to go through all of them, but is there anyone that you think like this person I think is really going to be good at taking up these sort of roles?
Hmm.
Any brilliant thoughts?
I mean, I would say Marcello, Devon, and Michael, all three are pretty young guys to my
Mhm.
knowledge. So that's definitely kind of one thing that stood out to me a lot. Marcello, I think, is the youngest. He's like 22, 23, I think.
Mhm.
Um, so they're definitely trying to bring in a Gen Z perspective to the cast. And I think they
Sure.
started to get a lot of that with like Please Don't Destroy last season, but like now we have the faces to that more.
Yep.
Um, so I think that that's definitely part of it. Michael, you know, with that Weekend Update debut, definitely felt a little Pete Davidson-esque, a little
Mhm.
Jimmy Fallon-esque.
New
Um,
resident young person. Yeah. Yeah.
resident young person gonna do stand-up bits at the update desk sort of guy.
Right.
Um, and Devin, I don't know that there's one specific role, but definitely feels just sort of there's kind of just a goofy air about him. So like I think he's just gonna maybe come on in those walk-on roles to make fun of himself a lot, like the corn cob and even Billy Ocean. Like I see
Mhm.
that feels like his brand to me.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, time will tell. Like I wish I could offer some insights, but yeah, you're the
We'll
only
see.
one New York side that can actually, get any access here. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the season shapes up.
Yeah. The other big shakeup of the season, apart from obviously all the departures, is I noticed in the credits that Jost and Che stepped down from their head writer roles. So that's
Mm.
definitely interesting.
I wonder if maybe they're eyeing a transition or an exit or something at some point, or who knows? I mean, we
Yeah,
can only speculate, but
right.
I wouldn't be at all surprised if maybe this was the last season for Jost and Che at the desk.
Yeah, I think it's definitely their tenure feels like it should be coming to an end just in the
Yeah.
time frame that it's been. They're it's gotten to the point where every week it's like so solid and so like last season I feel like every week we're like, yeah, it was good. And that's all we
Okay,
really had
so
to offer on it, you know? So like I feel like maybe it's time to get some fresh things in there, change it up a little bit.
so your hot take is it's working great, so let's fix it.
Right.
Yeah, okay. No, that in a way actually that's fair because even if it's working, like even if they're just like super comfortable and they found their groove and they can deliver week over week, the show thrives when it brings something fresh to the table. And at a
Right.
certain point, they just can't offer that. And it's not like they haven't defined an era, right? Like
Exactly. Yeah.
Jost has been at the desks, almost a decade.
He's been working there for like 20 years like
Yeah, I mean that's got to be a record tenure. That's
yeah.
even longer than Myers. So as well as they do at the desk, yeah, I could totally see the show thinking, okay, what's next? Like, how do
Mhm.
we transition into new anchors without it being like forced upon them? Like
Mhm.
someone decides to depart, and now over the summer they have to try and figure out good chemistry. Like, are they basically going to be watching throughout the season, trying to figure out who might be a good fit?
Mhm.
Maybe from the writers' room, maybe from the cast, all speculation, but I think you're right. I can feel like it could be a good time for them to start moving in that direction.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just it's good when you know what to expect of the show, but like there is I think you're at the point where even casual viewers can kind of guess the jokes
Yeah,
because they
yeah.
have such a defined voice and so that's not as
Yeah,
surprising anymore, right?
yeah, their structure, their setup,
Mhm.
their cadence. Like there aren't a lot of surprises. You're
Right.
absolutely right. Yeah,
So yeah, and then in Colin's book he talks about he's coming to peace with stepping down. He wants to make more time for family. So maybe,
right.
maybe this little baby step is what they needed. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yep.
It's interesting. I think it was a very solid start to the season under, the head writers now are Allison Gates, Kent Sublette, and Streeter Siddell,
Yep.
who were also co-head writers for the last half of last season. So it's not like,
Right.
it's not like it's gone to the wolves. We're in good
Mhm.
hands and like I think they have a very solid leadership. I like that each of the three of them have like their own distinct brands. So I feel like, they can sort of they can divvy up that workload to the things that suit their tastes best and I think that's actually really smart. I think I'm excited to see where they take the show.
Yeah, the show's gotten very good at succession and transition.
Mhm.
There's not a lot of like big shakeups that you can feel reverberate through the show
Right.
as much as in past eras where yeah, you lost some core member of the production and the next week it's like you knew you were watching a slightly different show. It's
Right.
not it's not that anymore. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure that all of these seasoned writers that are continuing to climb the ranks are gonna, do great.
Yeah.
They're supervising their quality control. It's not rocket science, but if you have funny people in those roles and the right people in the room, then you get good comedy. And I don't see any reason why we would assume that this season will be any less than previous seasons in that regard. So yeah, I think
For
those are all
sure.
good decisions. Yep.
Okay. Well, let's talk about this premiere a little bit. I think
Sure.
it was a heck of an episode that we got, right? Um but honestly, I pretty much just watched the cold open, they said everything I have to offer and I called John and said, "Should we even do an episode?"
Yeah. Yeah, no, this was the most meta of meta sketches you'll ever see on SNL. And it is funny because they say like they say all the things that the fans say, like the cliche is
Mhm.
about, oh, well, like if the host is in the cold open, then they must have confidence. Like those are words that I have spoken
Yeah.
verbatim 100
Mhm.
times over the last 5 years. It's funny to hear the show being as tuned in to the critique
Mhm.
and the perception that the audience has of the show at this point. That's always amusing. I don't know how much mileage we got out of that gag, but it was definitely a good way to reset the table and
Mhm.
let everyone know this is a rebuilding year. There's going to be, a few creaky sketches along the way, and we are aware of it.
Mhm.
So, it was fun in that regard that they can be a little tongue in cheek that way.
Mm. Well, speaking of rebuilding years, we're doing a
Yes.
little rebuilding too, eh?
Oh yeah, absolutely. If we're getting into that now, sure.
We are.
So, as our audience knows, over the summer we didn't turn out anything. We did manage to record 3 episodes. One of them
Right.
we will drop. The other 2, it's kind of pointless to do a postseason extravaganza for season
Right.
47 after season 48 premiere. So, even though we have those in the can, and we'll probably put the rough cuts out for Patreon, or something, like we'll do something with it for anyone that really want our insights on the cut for time sketches or the stuff that we covered in those. We just didn't have time to turn them into polished, packaged, releasable episodes due to, family drama, traveling, and obviously, you ramping up all of your extracurriculars. So, um, the thing is, though, um, those commitments, they're not going away anytime soon. Like you're not going to be slowing down with your sketch stuff and your writing stuff. Um, I'm not going to be slowing down with my family stuff. Turns out I knocked up my wife again. Someone's going to have to explain to me why this keeps happening. So
Wow,
I've
so
got,
delicate.
yeah, no, I'm a classy dude. Um, so I've got obviously things that I'm going to be preoccupied with. Um, so we were chatting over the last few weeks and trying to think very soberly about what that means for the show, because there's no point in doing the cast if we can't bring a measure of passion and joy to it, right? Like nobody wants to watch a joyless slog of a show where you can tell the people, they don't have the time or the energy to really do justice to it. And the one thing that I've always wanted the show to be was something where when people tune in, they know these are people that like put in the time to try and deliver quality content, like whether it be the analysis or the editing of the show and just the presentation of it or the structure of it. Like I never wanted to turn in anything that I couldn't be really proud of. And we've been able to maintain that as we've switched to video and you've taken the helm. I'm really proud of what we've put out. And so the big question becomes, well, if we're not certain that we can really commit to keeping the bar high that way and delivering the quality that I think defines our cast, because obviously there's a lot of shows out there people can tune into for SNL coverage, but we always wanted to carve out our niche and be our own funky little thing where hopefully we're the voice of the New York up and coming sketch comedians that we've been bringing on, and hopefully delivering a show that is just enjoyable to watch. It isn't just a quick and dirty podcast discussion. It's a bit more than that. And we weren't quite sure how we were going to pull it off, just time wise, because it takes a lot of time to produce one of these
Yeah.
episodes. So the conclusion that we came to was, well, we still love SNL. You're still in New York. You've still got some connections and access with the show, and we're going to continue to be doing some stuff with Heidi throughout the season. So like, it's not something we want to walk away from and just close the doors and call it a day. But we couldn't really commit to doing 21 episodes plus. Um, so what we're going to try is we're going to retool the show to be kind of like what you guys heard tonight, where we come in, we talk all things SNL, whether it be the latest news and the state of the show, um, and have just kind of a broader conversation about the state of the show each time they finish a run. So it's
Mhm.
kind of like a month in review show where SNL is going to be doing a run of 3, I believe. At least that's what's publicly announced at this point.
Mhm.
So when that's done, then we're going to pop in. We're going to talk about those 3 as a whole. Talk more about, like, rather than go through it sketch by sketch, talk about who's thriving at the show, which writers are ascending and getting their stuff through. Um, how is it impacting culture? Like we're gonna go a little broader and we're gonna do kind of a big blowout episode after each run. The nice thing about that is that it gives us a bit more runway to offer something unique, because I'm sure everyone who tunes into our show knows that there's a lot of other SNL podcasts out there, and they're all basically doing what we've been doing forever, which is, sketch by sketch weekly. And we don't really want to be in that race anymore. Like we don't want to be worried about, are we getting the content out like immediately after the show so that we're riding the wave of YouTube algorithm activity, and like we just we just don't have the stomach to like really be in the fray at that level and doing the weekly sketch by sketch show. But we got to have a chance to sit down and chat SNL. So
My
we're
opinions
switching.
must be known somehow.
Yes. Well, we're assuming that we have an audience that keeps coming back for more, so we must be saying something that has some value to someone out there. And if that continues to be the case, those people can still tune in and get our take and just our, just you want to check in with your buds once a month to find out, how they're feeling about the show. That's what we're going to be delivering. That way we can deliver a dozen episodes rather than 24 episodes. And
Right.
it'll give you the breathing room to be able to do what you're doing in the scene. And it'll give me time to deliver this baby and, deal with all the fun that goes along with that. And, who knows where we'll be at the end of the season, whether we're hankering to do more next season. But for this season, I think that's where we landed. Is that correct? Like, did I
Yeah.
present that kind of how we should have been?
Yeah, I think you presented it very well. Basically, my vision for it is to zoom out a little bit, look at the
Yeah.
show as a whole, really check in on the writers, the featured players, talk just broad strokes about it, and occasionally check in. The top sketches of the run. I would love to discuss them,
Yeah. Yeah.
and get into that stuff. Maybe some Q&A things. But yeah, I just wanted broad strokes of the show, and I don't think we've offered that yet. So
Yeah. Let's zero in on that. Because one of the other things that we used to do a lot more in the early days of the cast was I would put out the call for listener feedback every week, and we would try and address a few questions. And it got challenging to do that over time. Just timing constraints, right? Like we can't let the show be 2 hours every week. Um, but since we're doing kind of a broader state of the show kind of a cast, it's a great time to kind of pick that up. So we'll be putting the call out on Patreon for anyone that wants to go to the head of the line and get their questions and their thoughts in for us to bat around. Obviously, we'll still be engaging with people on Twitter and everywhere else that they find us now. So there'll be a bit more, I guess, audience participation. Like we're going to have a bit more time to deal with that on these
Mhm.
shows. So we will encourage people, like if you want to make your voice heard, if you want to, you know, have your say, we're going to kind of be the public square for that for the time being. And yeah, so between uh our audience having more opportunity to engage with the cast and us having the breathing room to kind of talk high level and probe the show from angles that you can't do when you're just doing a sketch by sketch review and
Mhm.
you're just grinding it out like Sunday, trying to beat the clock. I think we can have some more rewarding conversations when we're not just kind of stuck in that mold. So that's where our thinking's at. And I hope it bears fruit. I hope when we come back and deliver one of these shows that people will say, "Yeah, hey, you know what? SNL's off. I listened to all the other podcasts, but it's nice to have something on the off weeks to tune into and get a fresh perspective." That's the niche that we're going to try to fill this season, and see how it goes. See if people like it.
Yeah, it's a rebuilding year.
It is. In many ways, it's a rebuilding year for SNL and for us. So it's a great time to do it, actually. They got a new font in their opening montage. So why don't we retool as well? Like
Mm.
I think that's apropos.
All right. Well, I mean, yeah, that's where we're at. I feel good about it. John feels good about it. Steve was even excited about it. So,
Oh, you
you
actually
know,
talked to Steve about it?
I did talk to Steve about it
Okay,
briefly.
all right. I haven't checked in. I assume that, like always, I'll just fill him in after the fact and hope that he's on board. And he usually is. Like I said, he's
Yeah.
a stand-up dude. He's pretty easygoing. But if anyone's wondering, all of the familiar faces that we've had on in the past, they all have standing invites to join us any week that we
Yes.
do these episodes. So I'm sure you'll be seeing most of them throughout the season as well.
Yeah. Definitely be seeing Patrick. Definitely be seeing Charlotte. Uh,
Mhm.
I've
And
talked to
Steve.
them. They're in,
Yeah.
and Steve, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Very good. So yeah, that's I guess those are the broad strokes. Is there anything else about the premiere that is worth batting around? Like, was there a couple standout moments or anything that gave you an impression of how the show is just working right out of the gate. Because normally premieres are a little shaky, and it takes a few episodes before you get a clear impression of whether everyone's coming together. Any notable absences or notable performances? Anything that just caught your eye?
I thought they had some nice fresh perspectives coming in. You know, like we touched on the cold open. It was very meta, very self aware. I liked that, and then we had the Be Real sketch, which I thought was really fun.
Sure.
And speaking of,
Oh, is it that time?
speak of the devil, it's time to be real right now. John, are you
All
on
right.
Be Real?
Yeah, let's do this.
All right, let's do it. All right, we're real. It's
Okay.
official.
Yeah, I feel like that was an obligatory joke to throw in. We'll see how it lands. I'm sure you'll find it in the edit.
Yeah.
Not that you asked, but I had some thoughts. Thought number one, Bowen was ever present, so I don't think anyone's questioning whether he's going to be like a real standout, ever present member of the cast this season. Seems like he knows what he's doing, not just because he can generate material, but everyone just seems to be able to slot him in lots of different places and lots of different ways now. So that's nice to see. My other big thought was everything I saw from Keenan was so tried and true Keenan that there was a little part of me that felt like, man, have I just seen this too many times to feel like for the jokes to land? Like there's only so many times that Keenan can give like the coy like side look or play Neil deGrasse Tyson before you've seen all the tricks. And I know that it's historic that he's been at the show for 20 seasons, and I know that he's the glue, and I know that SNL just isn't SNL without him at this point. And I mean, we've only had one episode, so we can't be drawing any great conclusions. But I was kind of feeling like, you know what? I don't know if there was anything about this episode that I needed Keenan to elevate. And that's the first time I've ever had that notion, because I've always seen him save mediocre material with a clever glance, or just, the pitch perfect delivery on something, or just committing to a role or whatever it is. Like Keenan can do a lot with a little. And I just, for whatever reason, I just got this notion of, I'm not missing Kate. Like I'm not missing a lot of the other players that weren't present. I wasn't even thinking about them throughout the show. And every time Keenan showed up, I was kind of feeling like, I don't know if this is super necessary. So I don't know if that's a hot take or not, but only the rest of the season will tell us whether Keenan's still in it to win it. But I don't know. He stands out now that the show is rebuilding and so much of the cast has turned over. It is kind of funny to see him still there, just still doing what Keenan do. And I hope they make hay with him, and I hope that he still enjoys his time there. But I just wonder if there's that much more for Keenan to do at SNL.
Keenan's been on TV my whole life, so
sure.
I don't think I'm capable of having that thought.
Yeah, it's and you know what? Like his sitcom is done, right? Like that's officially canceled. So maybe he's just got the time and Keenan got to work. So
yeah, Keenan's gonna make some money. That's one thing for sure.
Yeah, so Keenen might be around for another decade. Who knows? But it struck me funny, and I thought, you know what? If we're looking for stuff to bat around about the premiere, that was it. Like, excited to see all the new players as always. Like that's really the heart of SNL is the up and comers and how they make the show their own. And then you've got Keenen just doing what he's doing, anchoring things, like not doing anything wrong. But I've seen it all, and I hope to see something fresh to make me reconsider that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, another thing I was very excited to see.
Okay.
Again, not that anybody's, the show is not a puzzle where you have to have one piece to match the one that just left. Right.
Yes.
But it was pretty beautiful to get to the end of the night and have a Heidi Ego duo where there once would have been guaranteed a Kate and Aidy duo.
Yes.
And we love to see that. Lots of airtime for Heidi. I love them together. I don't think they do enough sketches of them as a duo, and so I'm excited to see that become more of a thing.
Well, you'll notice in the super meta opening sketch, they introduced Heidi as like a senior player, like a ringer that never misfires. Yeah, there's nobody higher up at this other like I
Yeah.
mean there's Keenan, but
And Cecily at some point, but yeah.
well, yeah. But there's a lot more room to breathe
Hmm.
for the
Yeah.
seasoned rep players.
Yep.
Th-
We saw a
I
lot of Chloe too.
yeah. So my hunch is that Heidi and Ego, they're going to be able to just through sheer clout and tenure, um, be able to get a lot more stuff produced that is fun for them rather than writers bringing something to them. I love to see vehicles that at their core are like Heidi and Ego vehicles because
Hmm.
I think that's where they're having the most fun. And that's where that kind of sometimes spills out of the screen a bit. It's a little infectious when you know that this is something that they're doing because it's the kind of goofy stuff that they want to be doing. It should be no secret to anyone that follows the show closely that Ego and Heidi are like super SNL BFFs. They shared a change room, not a change room, they a dressing room,
Right.
a sitting room, whatever you want to call it, when they were featured players together. Um, so like they came up through the trenches together. They've both made it, right? Like they're now in the top tier and good on them. Like I hope that every week there's one vehicle where you're like, yeah, this was their passion project for the week and they can get them over because that's where they're at in the show. And I'll be more than happy to see it. Obviously we're biased. We always have to add that disclaimer.
Right.
We love Heidi on this show, but yeah, it was nice to see. And that wasn't lost on me either. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. They're, they're heavyweights now. And of course they're going to find stuff to do together because why wouldn't they?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a Heidi Ego duo sketch in my packet, and
Mhm.
I guess I was just a little ahead of my time on that.
Maybe,
Next
but
year would have
hey,
been the better year.
yeah, you can always resubmit. We'll see.
We'll
We'll see.
see. They're not getting rid of me that easy. All right. Well, that's really I think all we've got for you this week. Yeah.
Well, we talked a little weekend update. We talked the cold open.
Yeah.
We talked Heidi and Ego.
Mhm.
That's really everything about SNL that I think I care about. Really, really about the premiere. Like we could dig deep on cameos. We could talk about the host more. But honestly, like I saw Top Gun Maverick. Dude was good in it, but I have no other great insights on
Yeah.
Teller. So yeah, I think at this point, anything else we'd have to say is probably what people can tune in and get from the other shows. So more than happy to send them over to the other cast to get their sketch by sketch rundowns. But this is the
Yeah.
kind of stuff that we'll be bringing, and we hope that everyone comes back in a couple weeks to hear what we thought of the first October run.
For sure. I'm excited about it. And before we sign off, I want to one more time plug my show
Mm.
on October 17th at 7:30 at the Squirrel NYC under St. Mark's. And John, where are you? Do you have a baby registry we can send them to?
Oh no, we've got all the crap that we'll ever need. After 3 kids, you accumulate. So,
Right.
but my new project will be dropping January 6th, depending on factors out of our control. It's not a public show. It's only a select few are going to be allowed in, and obviously I'll be videoing it, so we'll put it up for the Patreons. But seriously, yeah, I will not be doing anything SNL related in January.
And now at this point, I'm unclear if that's a baby joke or an insurrection joke.
Oh no, no. In all honesty, my new baby is due on
Okay.
the darkest day in American history.
Gotcha.
So there's that. I mean, if it comes out Republican, I'll keep you posted. But that was not anywhere in my thinking.
Okay.
But we are due early January, so that's going to be a blackout period for me. So I will be enjoying tuning into whatever it is you come up with that month. But otherwise, I'd be happy to pop in whenever whenever you got a seat to fill, and I'm sure we'll be talking more throughout the season.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a wrap. Thanks to John Murray, and thanks as well to our most generous patrons, Neil Weinstein, Justin Gardner, Grace Kogan, and Brian Clark. If you're enjoying our show, please subscribe on YouTube or wherever better podcasts can be found. Your subscription helps us grow, and your support is greatly appreciated. We'll be back in 1 week with a fun vintage episode covering Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's season 25 hosting debut. And then we'll return to cover SNL's October run the following week. But until then, this has been episode number 163 of the Saturday Night Live Afterparty podcast. I'm Katherine Coleman. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
You got to kind of give it a bit of room to breathe before you say at SNL podcast. Then it sounds like a definitive statement. Then you can move on.
Okay.
Would you like me to run through it so you can hear how a pro does it?
I'm glad we have that recorded.
Yeah, you should.
I'm just going to drop that on Instagram as like, this is why it's over. Yeah.